16 billion passwords to Apple, Facebook, Google, and other social media accounts, as well as government services, were leaked in what researchers are calling the largest data breach ever, according to reports. The leak exposed 16 billion login credentials and passwords, prompting both Google to tell billions of users to change their passwords and the FBI to warn Americans against opening suspicious links in SMS messages, according to a report published Thursday in Forbes. Researchers at Cyber News who have been investigating the leak found, quote, 30 exposed data sets containing from tens of millions to over 3.5 billion records each. All but one of these data sets have not been previously reported as being exposed, so the data impacted is all considered new. Quote, this is not just a leak, it's a blueprint for mass exploitation, the researchers said, and they are right. These credentials are ground zero for phishing attacks and account takeover. Quote, these aren't just old breaches being recycled, they warned. This is fresh, weaponizable intelligence at scale. So like I said, these are some pretty important and big companies that have been affected, including Google, who, by the way, is the gateway for your YouTube account as well. So since this is, I guess, affecting Google, it is probably going without a little bit of saying here that you should be changing your passwords. And I don't mean just change one of your account passwords. You should probably be changing basically every password that you have. And I know that most of you honestly are using like the same one or two passwords. You're not even like bringing in new or harder to crack passwords. A lot of you are just using, you know, password 123 or your birthday. So yeah, you probably should be changing your passwords. And I know a lot of you, oh, but what's going to happen if my accounts are hacked or accessed? Well, there is a pretty big amount of caution to be had with a lot of these different things. Now, with a lot of these data breaches, and I'm not saying this one in particular, I'm just saying in the grand scheme of things, because this is a growing phenomena where it seems like every other month now, there's some massive exploitation, some new data set hits the dark web, your information is exposed in a new way. We're at a point where a lot of people just don't care, or they don't even realize what's being leaked. But in some of these cybersecurity incidents, it's not just passwords. Now, this one here in particular seems to be like user data, like passwords or whatever, that has been leaked for all these different platforms. But in some of these other breaches and data thefts and whatnot, right, there is more sensible information that is stolen. For instance, in some cyber attacks and ransomware attacks and whatnot, people can have their names, home addresses, social security numbers, phone numbers, personal information, other things like this leaked in these dark web database leaks, right? So it is one of these things where, yeah, you know, oh, you might think it's just your password or whatever, but for a lot of you, you also have to remember, I know a lot of you probably use the same password for like your bank account that you use for other shit. You gotta think, most people have no password etiquette. They don't really go out of their way to make creative passwords. So these kinds of things can affect a lot of people in pretty negative, pretty shitty ways, right? And the issue is, this isn't even like a limited thing. This is a pretty massive breach. 16 billion login credentials. I mean, you can just assume that basically everybody using the internet had their information involved in this in some way or another. I mean, if it's not literally basically everybody, it's gotta be like a pretty massive portion. Most of that intelligence was in the format of a URL followed by logins and passwords. That information then allowed access to, quote, pretty much any online service imaginable, from Apple, Facebook, and Google to GitHub, Telegram, and various government services. While worrisome, the researchers found that the datasets were exposed very briefly, with enough time for them to be discovered, but not long enough for researchers to figure out who was controlling the data. Researchers have determined the leak is the work of multiple info stealers, but it's impossible to tell how many people or accounts were exposed, according to Cyber News. The experts urge people to invest in password management solutions, not share their passwords, and to stay alert in the event their passwords are compromised. Alright, so obviously they're right now probably trying to figure out the full extent of what exactly is going on here. I mean, this is a pretty massive situation. It is, like I said, the biggest password breach in history up until this point. And it seems like only a few months ago we were talking about the new, largest cyber attack that had ever taken place. In fact, it seems like every couple of weeks or something, this headline is coming up. So we're kind of at this point where everybody is, I think, becoming more aware of these kinds of situations. I mean, I'm sure most of you watching this video probably have your spam notifications on your text messages turned off at this point, because if you don't, you're going to have unknown numbers calling you, texting you saying, oh, we're the USPS, your parcel couldn't be delivered, or they're saying, oh, we're the DMV, here's your license info, Amazon failed delivery for your package, and it's always some spam link where if you click it, it's going to try and harvest information from you, it's going to try and get your information for your accounts, and it's basically going to steal your shit, right? So it's not like this is some one-off thing that only a few people deal with. I think we're kind of all at the point where this is a daily nuisance for everybody watching this. So if you're one of the people who are somehow avoiding dealing with this kind of stuff, you must be one of the luckiest people on the planet. I genuinely envy the fact that you do not deal with this. Now, what does this mean going forward? Well, obviously, I once again think this goes without saying. This is basically just the way life is now, you know? And it sucks to say that because you would think that with these big companies, they invest so much money into like their networks, into their security, into their entire I guess, structure of their business. You would think that you would be more protected from these kinds of things, but the truth is, these cyber crimes and the cyber criminals carrying them out have gotten so sophisticated at this point in time. I mean, they've had decades now, basically, to kind of build up these strategies that they're employing and build up this ransomware wave that they've been doing, you know, just building up all these different strategies to steal people's information and make money off of it, right? So, more people than ever are using the internet, more people than ever are signing up for things, and more people than ever have all these different accounts they don't know how to manage, which means that, you know, these old outdated accounts that get left for years, you know, you breach the website, you have a password, like I said, most people use the same password, you get one password, you can break 5 of their other accounts if you play your cards right, and that's for like the average internet user. So that's probably why in the last few years you've heard so much more about, you know, oh, you need a password manager, oh, don't click suspicious links, all these different things. Skins. When you're playing, you know, video games on other platforms, same thing, you're worried about people stealing your account. Your Google account, you're worried about people hacking. Apple, worried about people hacking. Microsoft, worried about people hacking. Every company, everything, your bank, you know, your PayPal, everything that you use online, it has gotten to the point where you're constantly worrying, fuck, am I using some breached password? Am I recycling my bank password? Is this password strong enough, right? All for 3 months later, you have to refresh the cycle. That way you don't get your shit leaked in a new breach, right? Well, obviously the right thing to do is constantly update your passwords. That helps protect you in instances like this. But also at the same time, you have to be kind of, I guess, aware of what's going on because, like I said, I feel like this is not being reported as much as it should be, right? Because I get a lot of these 16 million data records or whatever that were leaked. They're probably duplicates, same person, different accounts or whatever, right? But at the same time, even if like a fraction of these accounts are in a position where they're vulnerable or whatever, I feel like a lot of these people probably have no idea that this shit is even going on in the first place. So if there's not some sort of like widespread messaging to let people know, hey, your passwords are vulnerable, they have been accessed possibly, you should probably be resetting all of your sensitive passwords and things like that. That's the kind of way that we can really combat this because they always talk about every year, oh, the cybercrime has reached a new peak in terms of money that it's stolen from the world. Yeah, of course it's going to continue to steal money and siphon resources from people and make all of this money in illicit ways. If people are blind to what's going on, they have no idea that their accounts are even vulnerable in the first place. Most people are not tech illiterate. That's the reality of the situation. You would think that because we've had computers for like 30 years now and internet access for 30 years now in the average household in America, you would think that people would know this stuff. You would think that people got it back in like 1997. Oh, I should change my password. But that's not the case. People today are still, once again, password 123, first name 123, shit like that, right? It's the easy, memorable go-to password. Everybody does it. And that's the problem, because when shit like this happens, next thing you know, you're locked out of your $2,000 Steam wallet because your password was breached. You can't get into your email because your Google has been completely stolen. These are the kinds of things you want to avoid. Nobody wants to go through this shit, right? So the problem is we're gonna keep going through it. And I don't think there's ever going to be a point where we're really mentally free from this shit. Especially with like artificial intelligence and stuff coming up, you know, you hear all the time, oh, it's going to make everything so much safer. Sure, it might, but it's like the same thing we're dealing with now. There's all these researchers, there's all these programs that people are constantly improving, trying to prevent attacks like this. But the criminals are also intelligent. They're also growing and increasing their capabilities. It's a tug of war, and it's always gonna be. There's gonna be a point where, yeah, artificial intelligence may crack the code for 2 years, and then next thing you know, they'll fight back. It's how it always goes. But the thing is, with our lives increasingly becoming more and more digitized, all of our financial systems becoming more and more digitized, we're getting to a point where when people lose their shit in data breaches, it's significant shit. It's no longer just a password to an account. For a lot of people, you know, this might be their work email, or this might be an account where they have 500 of their photos backed up on, things like that. There's always uses for these accounts, and there's the same thing with criminals. I mean, they have uses for hacking your account too. They have uses for getting all of this information and selling it. There is always gonna be this constant battle that we have.